Hi guys, it's Weeded. I'm here with a project that is perfect for beginners with cold wax medium to learn a little bit more about how it works. And I'm showing you the colors. I'll go through everything that I'm doing shortly, but I want to talk about the method for just a minute. This is perfect if you don't have a whole lot of time. This project, working with stencils, does take time in that you do it over several days, but truly you're only spending 5, 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes, however long you want, each day or every other day. It's a very forgiving project. I love to do this when, oh my gosh, I need to create, but you know what? I don't have a whole lot of time to do this. I need to do something, and this is perfect because it doesn't take a whole lot of time at any one time. It's just spread out over days. So there are some steps in here where I took 5 or 10, maybe 15 minutes at the most. What I did here, the green is still wet. It is mixed with cold wax at a 50-50 ratio to oil paint to cold wax medium. I'm using my homemade cold wax. I did have when I started with cold wax, I used Gamblin's cold wax medium. I now make my own simply because it's more cost effective. There are different recipes out there, and I do have a video on how to make your own. I'm just smearing and spreading around, trying to get a background. That's all I'm doing here. I have it, the Arches oil paper, which is really just a great substrate when you're experimenting, you're playing. What we're doing here is not meant to be a great piece of art. In fact, I liked working on it, and I liked what I was doing. I did not like something that I did at the very end, and I'll explain that in a minute. But here, I'm just scraping around and playing and trying to get a blue-green background. That's all I'm after. So I did the blue and the green in the same sitting. I will tell you when I change over, and I'm moving it around. So again, this is just a perfect beginner project. It's also a perfect project if you just need to do something that is not stressful. And this was totally not stressful. I'm sorry. Now there I made a mistake. I had that dark on there. I didn't want it. No big deal. Scrape it off and keep going. That's another thing I like about the cold wax medium. Don't like it? Just remove it. You can do that with other mediums too, but it seems really easy to me with the cold wax medium. Talking about substrates for just a minute, I do like using Arches oil paper. There are some other companies that have oil paper out there. I'm sure they are great as well. This is just what I have, and I like using it when, again, I'm doing a play project or I'm experimenting, or it's not something that I think I'm going to frame. If it turns out great and I end up wanting to frame it, then it's easy enough to pop into a watercolor frame or even a frame meant for photos. So very inexpensive to frame. When you're using cold wax medium, you do have to use a substrate that's appropriate for oil paint. I tend to take hardboard and gesso it myself, and if I like the texture, so sometimes I make it rough on purpose. Other times I go through and sand it down and get it as smooth as possible. So, but cradle board tends to be expensive. Now here's me showing you how to mix it. So I've got cold wax medium, and I use basically phthalo blue, phthalo green, and then that torte gray. That torte gray was a freebie. I think I ordered 3 colors of oil paint, and they threw that in there a long time ago. I believe what they really do is take their leftover paint excess and mix it all together, and that turns into the gray for the year, and they package it up and then market it as a freebie when you buy so much paint, because I have gotten quite a few of these different grays that were promotions. So I mix about 50-50 paint and I didn't speed through this because I want you to see how long it takes me to mix it up. I actually did this video back in late October, early November, because again I spread it out. There were, I think one time I even went a week before I did anything. So this is a super forgiving project time-wise. But my husband and I both came down with COVID-19, and I'm explaining that because I'm going to tell you I cannot remember the name of the utensil that I'm using. I did not have a severe case of COVID-19, but I did have an event that has led me to being on medicine for the rest of my life, and it affects my memory, and I cannot think of the name of the tool that I'm using. What I want to explain about that tool is it's super bendy. I'm going to call it a spatula for lack of the correct term at the moment, but it's super bendy, and I absolutely love that about that particular one. I have others, and I just, yeah, I love that one that is super bendy for mixing up. Now, a gift card or an old credit card is fantastic. If you don't have the spatula tool thing, then get out an old gift card or an old credit card, because honestly, it is perfect for cold wax. You don't have to have, that's another thing about cold wax, you don't have to have a whole lot. I did this whole thing basically using those 3 paint colors. Now I cheat. Later on I come in and yeah, I'm speeding up. You see me doing this, so you know what's happening. But later on I decided I wanted a 4th color, and I also used some white. So again, you don't have to have just tons of colors. You can do a good job even with just 3 colors. And when I say 3 colors, not usually including black and white. But I think that the gift card is my favorite tool to use. I just wanted to darken around the edges. Now, what I forgot to tell you is I let the blue and the green background dry. So this would be the next day or the next 2 or 3 days. The next day is fine. Sometimes I went 2 or 3 days because I just didn't have time. But this is what makes this project so very forgiving. I did dig out some of my most total favorite, I was trying to see what I was doing there. I did dig out some of my most total favorite stencils for this particular project, just playing around. And the stencils, I have because I do a lot of craft work and art journaling, and I love making cards, but I keep my art stencils separate from my craft stencils, which is a pain. I think that it would be nice if I would double duty them, but the thing is, how I clean up cold wax medium, I don't use solvents, I just use oil. Right now I'm working on a bottle of mineral oil. You can use baby oil, you can use vegetable oil, you can use just about any kind of oil that you want. That's why I keep my stencils separate from my craft stencils. I'll never get the oil residue off. Now I've let it dry, okay, and I'm coming back. These are oil pastels in what I'm considering complementary colors. I don't have a plan. I don't know what I'm doing. I just want to make some marks. So that's all I'm doing here. I don't have any idea of what I'm really going to end up with. So I just take my oil pastel. Does not have to be high quality. We're just playing here. So I just go in and make some marks. So I wanted this to have, since I'd already picked out my stencils, I knew that I wanted to use these stencils, but every time I sit down, I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do to my painting here. So that day I decided I was going to make some marks with oil pastels. I'm coming in with the little darker one, and I discovered that, yeah, it added a little bit, but you really couldn't see it, so I quit. It is not dry, okay? oil pastel does not need to dry like that. So, and that's another beautiful thing. You can just sort of plop the paper towel down and mix on top of it, and you're not going to mess anything up. When I am not working on my piece, I tend to leave it covered with the paper towel, even if it's a fresh application of cold wax medium and paint. As long as it's not really wet, and it shouldn't be, I don't have any problem. Now, if my cat were to come and walk on top of it, then yeah, that might be an issue. So in this sitting, I did the oil pastel, and then I come back with that darker, and I go in, and I was planning on just using just that tool, but you see, I get tired, and I'm like, I don't like the marks it's leaving, so I come in with my, again, gift card scraper and have at it. At some point, I think I decide I don't like how much I've done, and I come back and I scrape it off. One of the cool things about oil pastel is sometimes, and this is a neat thing, it's called scraping back, but you cover it with the oil paint, and I'm thinking, oh no, I want that to show up. So you go back and you scrape it off, and you can see, you can get back to the layer underneath. I decided I still wanted more definition even after I scraped off. So there we go. And I'm trying to determine if this is the next day or not. It is. Okay, I let it dry. Let that really dark dry. And I am mixing up what I'm going to apply to the first stencil. Again, I mix it 50-50. If it still has shiny spots or looks a little oily, then I add more cold wax medium. And it, you know, you have to work it and make it blend really good. There I'm dragging it out to check the color, and I go back in and mix it up, and then I check the color, and that's one of the nice things about having the white palette. Now there's my stencil, and you can see it's been previously loved and used. With the cold wax medium, if you don't clean it off relatively quickly, then it's going to stay on your stencil. Okay, it's sort of like acrylic. If you don't clean it off fairly quickly, then you're going to have stuff. So it's a crackle, and I'm just adding crackle around the edges with that really dark color. Again, cleaning it is not a big deal. I just take mineral oil, rub over it, and clean it off. I just waited too long previously when I used the stencil, so it's got some color on it. But they're meant to be used, so that's fine. Now, there I'm showing the detail that I've added with the stencil. This is the next day. It's still a little wet, and I'm showing you that. But you can still work on it and not really mess it up if you're relatively careful. If you're heavy-handed, then maybe wait until it's completely dry. And there you can see me mixing in the ratio that I'm mixing. And if I'm not mistaken, I decided that I'm using this green, and there, what you see is my cold wax I keep in the crock pot that I make it in. I've got a dedicated crock pot for making cold wax medium. I also have a dedicated crock pot for my encaustic medium. So I'm coming in with a darker color. It is the next day, but the crackle is not quite dry, and I'm just sort of coming over it. And I love this particular stencil. I use it a lot. I used it in craft, and then I decided that I wanted it in my art supplies. And again, I don't mix those up because I clean with oil, and I never get all the oil off, I don't think. So if I were to lay it down on a sheet of paper for a card, I don't think that would work very well. I don't want to try, and I don't even want to try it, to be truthful. So this is the next day, honestly. No, it's not. I'm still adding the dark color, I think. If it's the lighter color, then it's the next day, because I let it dry in between the two different color leaves. So again, I'm trying to see because I don't remember at this point. That was so long ago. Yeah, So it's the next day. I'm adding the lighter color leaves, and even if the darker leaves are not completely dry, and I don't think they were, it was not a problem for me to go on top with this lighter color. Okay, so I'm having to splice the video audio on it, so I apologize if it's not a smooth transition. But here I'm still just adding the light color on top. And this is why I say this is such a great project to learn and experiment with cold wax medium when you don't have a whole lot of time and you're just a few minutes every day. That stencil kind of smeared a little bit, but again, this wasn't meant to be really a finished painting. And I had another stencil to smear, and I'll show you that a little bit later. But again, I didn't worry too much because this really and truly was meant to be a play, and it worked perfectly. It's just great for relaxing. And now I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. It looks like I'm mixing up some of the darker green and going in. So I think I wanted, yeah. So again, I let it dry and I came back. No, I didn't. I did not. I did it on top of the fresh green. I went ahead and just added some more of the dark in a couple places. So playing around, and I really like how it's developing at this point, but I wanted to add something else. So again, this is the next day, I believe, because I'm going in. This is where I decided I wanted some flowers in the background. So I believe I let it dry, and then I came in with this next color. And I'm showing you, it was, this is just, again, I can't remember the name of the tool, but you see what I'm doing. I'm just flopping it down there and letting it say, hey, look, there's a sort of a flower-like thing going on right here. I love that particular tool. It came in a set, and it's so fun. It just sort of gives you the vague impression that there's a flower with petals. So, and my imprint didn't take well. You have to load it up pretty well to get it to do this. So there's got to be a good bit of cold wax on the bottom of that tool, and it was a gift. It had, I believe, a set of 8 different, I can't think of the name. Okay, this is the next day, or again, let it dry overnight at least. And this is where I really messed up. I went way too light. So I was looking for a nice good contrast, change in value, and so I keep adding white, and I did what I wanted. I said I wanted something that looked pretty white, that was just really pretty white, but it was too much change in contrast. So I'm not happy with this next step. To me, I was happy with what had been happening until I did this next step. But again, all I'm doing here is playing and doing something to sort of relax. So I wasn't trying to create a great masterpiece. So I have a pretty floral stencil. This is a Jane Davenport stencil, and you'll see it's just too much contrast at this point. And that stencil smeared for whatever I wanted, a little darker in the center, and it smeared. And so I scrape a little bit off, and you can see it's just too bright for the rest of what I've done. But again, I don't like the next thing that I end up doing at the very end, or the thing that I end up doing at the very end. So I'm cleaning it up just a little bit. Nice thing about cold wax is that you can do that, and working with oil paint is that you can do that fairly well. And then I decide I've gotten it to a point where I can live with it. Because I was unhappy with how bright it was. That was a total mistake. And then I turn out I don't like when I removed the tape. Glad I remembered that name. When I removed the tape, I was really unhappy. Now the flowers at the top, the color was a little bit better, and I've smeared it a little bit, so I'm just wiping it off. it helps that it's dry underneath so that I can do that. Again, smeared it, wipe it off a little bit. I decided I needed some of the color down at the bottom, and so I'm putting in some using different stencils. Now, I hate this. I don't know why I taped it to begin with. I'm just playing, so I did. And it worked very well. You can see if you burnish the tape down well, then it works well. Cold wax medium plays very well with this technique. So, yeah, it was a great one. But it's just one that I didn't particularly care for with what I had done. So there you have it. That's basically the project, and I hope you'll try it. This is perfect if you're a beginner with cold wax medium. It lets you play with it in an easy way. This is a great first project for cold wax. Thank you guys.